For years, fans watched Matt Brown survive some of life's toughest challenges. But now, a heartbreaking update has left the entire Alaskan Bush people community in shock. What began as reports of a mysterious incident near a Washington river quickly turned into every family's worst nightmare. As details started emerging, even those closest to Matt struggled to believe what had happened. So, what really led up to this tragic moment? And why are so many people talking about Matt Brown today? Let's take a closer look. Okay? The first signs that something was wrong came late at night near Washington's Okanogan River. At first, very few details were available. Reports began circulating that emergency crews had rushed to the area after a concerning call from a witness. According to authorities, a man had been seen sitting in the shallow waters of the river before suddenly disappearing into the current. Bund. What made the situation even more unsettling was how quickly the search escalated. Law enforcement, firefighters, and rescue teams immediately responded, scanning the river and surrounding areas for any sign of the missing person. But despite their efforts, there was no immediate breakthrough. As hours passed without answers, concern continued to grow. And, adding to the mystery, officials refused to release the identity of the individual involved. That decision sparked intent, with fans of Alaskan Bush people beginning to wonder if someone connected to the famous Brown family could be involved. At that point, however, nothing had been confirmed, and rumors were spreading faster than facts. Meanwhile, people close to the situation were desperately hoping for good news. The uncertainty surrounding the search left many fearing the worst while still holding on to hope that the missing person would somehow be found safe. But as the investigation continued, a devastating revelation was about to change everything. But that wasn't the whole story. As rumors continued spreading online, one member of the Brown family decided he couldn't stay silent any longer. Bear Brown took to social media with an emotional message, revealing that he had received deeply troubling information about his older brother, Matt. What made Bear's statement so powerful was that he wasn't claiming to have all the answers. In fact, he repeatedly stressed that the reports he was hearing had not yet been officially confirmed. Still, the concern in his voice was impossible to ignore. He explained that multiple people had allegedly witnessed a disturbing incident near the river, and authorities were actively Bleed for fans watching his video, it was clear that Bear was caught between hope and heartbreak. He wanted to be honest with supporters who had followed the Brown family for years, but he also didn't want to spread information that hadn't been verified. That uncertainty made the situation even more emotional. Bear explained that he felt people deserved to hear what was happening directly from the family, rather than through rumors circulating online. As speculation continued to grow, he tried to remain cautious while also preparing himself for the possibility of devastating news. The video quickly gained attention, with thousands of viewers expressing concern and sending messages of support. Many hoped that somehow the reports were wrong. Others feared that the family's worst nightmare was already becoming reality. Sadly, within hours, the situation would take an even more heartbreaking turn. After hours of uncertainty, the update everyone had been dreading finally arrived. The search that had captured the attention of fans and family members alike, came to a heartbreaking end when authorities recovered a body from the Okanogan River. Not long afterward, Bear Brown returned with another emotional message. This time, the uncertainty was gone. According to Bear, the body had been identified as his brother Matt. The news sent shockwaves through the Alaskan Bush people community, with many fans struggling to process what had happened. What made the moment even more difficult was the family's direct involvement. Bear revealed that family members were present during the recovery efforts, turning an already devastating situation into something even more personal. For a family that has spent years sharing parts of their lives with the public, this was a tragedy unfolding in real time. Ben Diaz's messages of support poured in from across social media. Many viewers reflected on Matt's long history with the show and the challenges he had faced over the years. For some fans, it felt impossible to believe that one of the original faces of the Brown family was suddenly gone. But amid the grief, questions quickly began to surface. Many people wanted to understand what had happened during Matt's final years and why he seemed so distant from the family that viewers had watched for more than a decade. And the answers would reveal a struggle that had been unfolding far away from the cameras. Long before this tragedy made headlines, Matt Brown had been fighting battles that most viewers never fully saw. While millions of fans knew him as one of the original stars of Alaskan Bush People, life behind the scenes became increasingly difficult as the years went on. According to statements shared by family members, Matt struggled with substance-related issues for a long time. There were periods when he worked hard to get his life back on track, and at various points, he openly discussed efforts to maintain his recovery. Those close to him hoped he was moving toward a more stable future, but the journey was never simple. As the years passed, Matt also became more isolated from the public spotlight. While the rest of the Brown family continued appearing together, Matt's presence grew less frequent. Fans often wondered why he seemed absent, leading to endless speculation online. Some believed there had been a major falling out, while others assumed he simply wanted a different life away from television. The reality appears to have been far more complicated. Personal struggles can be difficult enough in private, but facing them while being recognized by millions adds another layer of pressure. Every setback becomes public discussion, and every rumor spreads faster than the truth. Despite the challenges, those who cared about Matt never stopped hoping things would improve. Family members continued encouraging him to focus on his recovery and keep moving forward, even when progress seemed difficult. But behind the scenes, the situation was becoming more complicated than most people realized. And what many fans believed about Matt's relationship with his family wasn't entirely accurate. And for years, one rumor seemed to follow Matt Brown everywhere. Many fans became convinced that the Brown family had completely turned their backs on him. Because he was rarely seen alongside his relatives and no longer appeared regularly in the spotlight, people began creating their own explanations for what had happened behind closed doors. But according to Bear Brown, that popular narrative wasn't entirely true. Lumped in the emotional videos he shared following the tragedy, Bear explained that the family had not intentionally pushed Matt away. Instead, he claimed that Matt had gradually chosen to distance himself from family members over time. While outsiders assumed there was a dramatic family feud, the reality may have been much more complicated and painful. Bon Bear described how communication became increasingly limited. The brothers weren't speaking every day, and they weren't spending much time together. Instead, their contact had become occasional phone calls and brief conversations whenever circumstances brought them together. For a family once known for doing nearly everything side by side, that growing distance was heartbreaking in its own way. What makes situations like this so difficult is that many struggles happen out of public view. Fans often see only fragments of a person's life and naturally try to fill in the missing pieces. In Matt's case, those assumptions led to years of speculation about family conflicts, secret disputes, and personal disagreements that may not have reflected the full picture. According to Bear, despite the distance, he never stopped caring about his older brother. Whenever they did speak, he tried to encourage Matt and remind him that people were still rooting for him. It wasn't a story of a family that had stopped caring. It was a story of a family trying to navigate an incredibly difficult situation while watching someone they loved face ongoing challenges. And looking back now, one particular conversation would take on a completely different meaning. Sometimes it's the final conversation that stays with people forever. And for Bear Brown, one of his last interactions with Matt has now become a memory he will likely carry for the rest of his life. During his emotional update, Bear recalled briefly running into Matt at a Walmart. It wasn't a long reunion or a major family gathering. It was just a short encounter between two brothers whose lives had taken very different paths. At the time, neither of them could have known how important that moment would eventually become. LBLDM'd. Not long after that meeting, Bear received a phone call from Matt. According to Bear, Matt admitted that he had experienced another setback in his recovery journey. Rather than judging him, Bear tried to offer encouragement. He reminded his brother that setbacks happen, and that one difficult moment didn't erase all the progress he had made before. Bammed Bear reportedly encouraged Matt to keep fighting, keep moving forward, and seek help if he needed it. It was the kind of conversation many families have when someone they care about is going through a difficult period. A conversation built on hope, support, and the belief that things could still get better. But looking back now, those words carry a much heavier weight. Bear explained that this would end up being the last phone call he ever had with his brother. At the time, it felt like another attempt to encourage someone he cared about. Today, it stands as the final chapter of their relationship. And what seems to haunt Bear the most is that he never expected things would end this way. He openly admitted that while he worried about Matt's ongoing struggles, he never imagined this would be the outcome. Like many families facing similar situations, there was always hope that tomorrow would bring another chance, another conversation, and another opportunity to move forward. But after sharing that painful memory, Bear shifted his focus to something he felt people needed to hear, a message directed at everyone watching from behind their screens. As heartbreaking as Matt's story was, Bear Brown wanted people to take away something bigger than the tragedy itself. In the midst of his grief, he used his platform to deliver a message that clearly meant a lot to him. Bear spoke directly about the comments and criticism that often circulate online. Over the years, Matt had been the subject of countless discussions, rumors, and harsh opinions from strangers who only knew small pieces of his life. While public figures may appear on television screens and social media feeds, Bear reminded viewers that there are real people behind those images, people dealing with challenges that the public may never fully understand. His message wasn't angry, it wasn't about blaming anyone. Instead, it was a heartfelt request for compassion. He asked people to be respectful toward his family, especially during a time when emotions were already overwhelming. For the Browns, this wasn't a television storyline or an internet headline. It was the loss of a son, a brother, and someone they had known their entire lives. The reality is that social media can sometimes make it easy to forget that words have consequences. A comment typed in a few seconds can stay with someone far longer than the person posting it ever realizes. Bear's message served as a reminder that behind every celebrity, reality star, or public figure is a human being facing struggles, fears, and personal battles just like anyone else. His appeal resonated with many fans who flooded social media with messages of sympathy and support. People began sharing memories of Matt from the early days of Alaskan Bush people and expressing condolences to the entire Brown family. Fanned in many ways, Bear's final message transformed the conversation. Rather than dwelling solely on what had happened, he encouraged people to think about how they treat others and the impact kindness can have when someone is going through difficult times. And perhaps that's the lesson at the center of this entire story. Matt Brown's story was never as simple as many people believed. To fans, he was one of the original faces of Alaskan Bush people, a familiar part of a family that spent years sharing its life with the world. But behind the cameras was a man facing personal challenges that many viewers never fully saw. Bombed in the days following this heartbreaking loss, countless fans have reflected on Matt's journey, from his early years on television to the struggles he faced later in life. At the same time, the Brown family is left mourning someone who was much more than a reality TV star. He was a son, a brother, and a person whose absence will be felt for years to come. Buying Kane, perhaps the most powerful takeaway comes from Bear Brown's message. Throughout all the sadness and he reminded people that those we watch on television and follow online are real human beings. They face setbacks, carry burdens, and fight battles that aren't always visible to the public. As the Brown family continues to process this devastating chapter, fans around the world are remembering Matt and offering their support. And maybe that's the reminder this story leaves behind, that kindness matters more than we realize, that assumptions rarely tell the whole story, and that every person is dealing with challenges we may never fully understand. Tangent for now, Matt's story has come to an end, but the conversations about compassion, understanding, and supporting those who are struggling will continue long after the headlines fade away.